Yeah, today this should be pretty quick. We're just going to be going over an intro to clients and services. So this is another communication method in ROS2 that allows you to communicate between nodes. Pretty simple. We're just going to go through it, do a quick demo with the turtle sim right after. So yeah. So what we've covered so far, we've covered some basic ROS2 concepts, so like publisher subscribers, nodes, topics, messages, sensor messages, things of that nature, package and node creation, and of course simulation tiny cart setup. And you can see those in the previous recorded videos that should be on YouTube at this point. So today what we're going to be talking about is the another way for nodes to communicate, which is via a reply and response or request and response model. So let's say that I have a node that either doesn't need a constant update of information or needs information at a certain time. How do I guarantee that? If we go back to our magazine subscription analogy, I can't call up Wired magazine and be like, I would like a new magazine, please, and they'll just ship it to me. I have to wait until they send out their batch to all of their customers. So to get around this, we have a type of communication called client and service, where we would have a node that acts as a client and then another node that acts as a server. And what the client node can do is it can send a request message to the server node. The server node will take that request message, do something with the data that's been given, if it does provide data, and then sends back some kind of response message. So this allows for nodes to get on-demand data from another node if that's something you need, say if you want to perform an action at a certain time, or you want to tell a node to do something when another node gets some sort of trigger. And yeah, we can see a little GIF of that right in the bottom there. So we have the request message that goes up to the server node through the service that's created, and then the server will send back a response. So what do we need to define something like this? As we talked about before, we have what's called message files, so .msg files, which allow you to define using basic types like ints or floats what is being sent in a message from a ROS node to every other node that subscribes to that topic. So client and servers are set up in a similar way. So the way that we set this up is we just compose a similar message, except it's a .srv file for service, and we have a bit of unique syntax here. So as we can see at the bottom here, we have these little dashes. So this one file will define both the request message and the response message. So for example, if I wanted to have a service that adds two numbers given by the client, so the client sends two numbers to another node, and then the node will send back the addition of those two numbers, we can define here these two, everything above the dashed line is what's going to be in the request message. So the node that is acting as the client here will send those two ints over to the server. The server will take in those two ints. It will add them together, package them into an output message, and then send that back to the original sender. So that just allows you to send different bits of data if you want to define different things, if you want to give a node certain data based on something that's been given. And also mentioning that you can have different nodes both subscribe to the same service, and that service, whatever request messages are sent to the server, that request message will go back to the node that sent it. So as we can see here, each response that's given back and request is being sent to the node that requested it. So it's not like the publisher subscriber model where it'll be blasted out to every node. It only goes to whatever specific node asked for it. So it's a good way to compartmentalize and reduce the amount of complexity if you only need some data. So some of the commands related to services, we have just a quick overview for your later reference. We're going to do a quick demo with the turtle sim here in just a second to sort of show some of these off. But we have the ROS2 service list, which is like ROS2 topic list, where it will print out every running service to the console so that you can tell if your service is up and running or not. We have the ROS2 service type, where you give it a service name, which that just prints the SRV file and location of everything, so that you can easily find the service file, as I mentioned, that specifies out like what is in the request and the response message. You can do a interface show. This will actually print out the actual SRV file for you. So if you need to display if you want to display what a certain service's message is, you can use that. And service call allows you to manually call a service yourself, where the service name and type are the service type is the file name, and then the service name itself is the name of the service as defined on your system, with the arguments being any data that you want to give as the request message to the service. So that's the main set of commands related to services. The overview of this is pretty simple. This is just supposed to be like an intro. There's a couple of different pieces of ROS that use this, like navigation will be using this when we start talking about that after Thanksgiving break. Other things like that. It's just a really useful part of ROS. And then we can actually visualize some of this using the ROS2 turtle sim node and the ROS2 turtle teleop key node. So if you want to follow along with this, go ahead. But if we pop up into here, we can get into a new tab. I can zoom in so that's a little easier to see. We're going to CD to the home. So what we can do is we can do ROS2 run turtle sim node, and that's going to bring up the turtle sim node right here. So we can see our lovely little turtle guy. And then we can open up another new tab and then do ROS2 run turtle sim. I believe it's turtle teleop. Turtle teleop key. Turtle sim. Whoop. Cool. And then this will allow me to drive around our little turtle sim friend. And this is just a good starter node to sort of give you an idea of the different ROS concepts. And if I go into a third tab over here, we can see the output of some of these commands that I've listed. So if I run ROS2 service list, and give it a second, we can see that these are all of the services that are currently running on the turtle sim package. So we have a clear service, a kill service, a reset service, a bunch of services for getting parameters from the turtle. So as you can see, we can utilize these services to just grab data when we need it for certain actions if we want to do them, as well as doing certain actions with just a service. Because as we can see, the clear, reset, and kill services, actually, if I go ahead and do, let me just pop up here, so it's to service type. Well, no, it's the wrong one. I do ROS2 this type, and then slash clear. We can see that what we get is it tells us that this service is using a service from the standard services library. So these are just services that ROS gives you to use as a standard, but you can also define your own with the .srv file. And we can see that it's actually using the service empty. So the empty service means that no data is sent in the request and no data is actually received in the response. And the reason that you would want to do this is the clear service, for example, if I actually run this with the ROS2 service, ROS2 service call, that's what it is, call / clear, yep, there we go, with no arguments, because mouse is hard. As I mentioned, this sends and receives no data. Service type my bad. So std, yeah, not that. Std service is empty. There we go. We can see that it actually clears out all of the lines that were on the turtle's screen. So just to show you that again, if I go ahead and draw a little pattern here, try and make a little triangle. There we go. Nice. And then I run that service again with the empty service type. It clears all the lines. So this allows you to do actions. So while we haven't sent anything from our client to the server in terms of actual data, we have just told the server node, hey, I want to clear all of the lines off of the screen now. And in that case, you wouldn't need to actually send or receive any data. You would just do it. So services are also fantastic for that. We'll see a little bit of that when it comes to navigation, as I've mentioned. They do have services that do something similar to this. And of course, we can also I forgot to mention this as I went over it, but we can also do ROS2 service find, and then std services empty, and then this will tell us every single service that's being run that utilizes this service file. So these two services, clear and reset, both utilize the empty service file as just a, hey, like a little poke, like, hey, I want you to do an action now, please. So in this case, we have clearing the lines or just resetting the whole turtle sim is just an empty service. So if we want to also show some of the other service types for, let's say the turtle sim describe parameters. So turtle sim describe parameters. So we can see that we actually have here another, not quite the standard services service, but we have a special service called describe parameters. And if I do ROS2 interface, computer, why are you sad? There it goes. Interface show. Oh, she's upset. I don't think her CPU is up to the task of trying to do all this at once. Oh, poor laptop. This may unironically crash in like next couple seconds. Poor computer. It certainly seems like it. ROS2 interface show. CL. Please. Well, there we go. There you go. SRV. Describe parameters. There we go. We can see the description of the actual service file itself. So as you can see, here's our little line of 3 tacks that defines what's being sent in the request. So the request, as we can see with the comments, is just a list of parameters to get, and then what's being returned is the parameters requested from the node. So we can define different types here. We have a string, we have a uint8 for the type, another string for description, and then the actual float of the different parameters that we want to get. So this is just a little bit of a overview of what services can do. We're going to be talking about this more extensively as we move into some of the later topics. I just wanted to do this as a very fast intro to clients and services, just to get everyone familiar with the terms. And when we talk about like the service file or the request, what's being requested and what's being responded with, you'll sort of have more of an understanding of sort of what I'm talking about. So yeah, that's pretty much all I had.